Welcome to A to Z Jobs, the podcast that delves into the fascinating world of careers, one profession at a time.
In each episode, we'll deep dive into a specific profession, exploring its history, requirements, challenges, and rewards.
So get ready to expand your horizons, challenge your perceptions, and discover a world of possibilities. I'm Roxy,
And I'm Nate.
and we're excited to host you on this journey.
This week, we meet Steph, a seasoned talent advisor within a leading global talent and marketing organization based in Sydney, where she specializes in sourcing top-tier creative and digital talents. With a keen eye on industry trends and technology, she navigates the dynamic world of recruitment, acting as the vital link between her company and the ever-evolving market. In her podcast, Steph is shedding light on the essential role of communication and adaptability in her field. Reflecting on her own journey, she shares the determination to escape a job she hated and swiftly rising through the ranks by seizing opportunities.
Hi, Steph. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rox, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Let's dive straight in and ask you the first question. What do you do for a living?
I work as a talent advisor for a global advertising and marketing group here in Sydney. I kind of specialize in the creative and digital recruitment side of things.
It's a wide and broad amount of people, I can imagine.
A lot, yes. A lot of very different people. But I think that's what keeps the role fun is, you do meet so many different personalities and, hear a lot of, a lot of personal stories along the way.
Yeah, it's so much fun doing those interviews and hearing the personal stories and where they came from, how they got, well, what we're doing now.
That's what inspired us to do this.
Exactly.
What type of roles are they? Give us an example. What type of advice are you giving? What type of roles?
So in terms of the roles that I'm looking after, it's everything from sort of client services, so a lot of account executives, account managers, senior account directors, that sort of thing. On the there's a lot of project management. In terms of the creative profiles, it's a lot of graphic designers, UX UI designers, and a little bit of tech profiles. So, all of your development type people. So, a lot of web developers and app developers and that sort of thing.
It's such a broad amount of knowledge for you to learn about as well and get to know the jargon and every person you talk to. It
And
must be
as
so
soon as
exciting.
it's a lot, as soon as you get on top of a lot of the jargon, particularly in the tech side of things, it changes and updates and you've got to learn it again. So you're kind of relearning a lot of the skills with each brief that comes in, but again, it keeps it interesting.
Yeah. I was talking to my boss at the moment, and she was saying she used to work in finance and how boring it was because it was the same interview every time. It's the same skill sets, the same things that you're looking for, and she said it's the same people. So it was, yeah.
Very different approach to recruiting for those sorts of people. It's nice to do the one off, but yeah, definitely couldn't do it full time.
No.
So you've got quite a variety there with the different industries. So how does that work for day to day for you? What does an average day look like in your world?
A lot of emails. They always keep coming. It's hard to sort of pigeonhole what a normal day looks like, but it's just a lot of communication, really. I'm really just the middleman between my company and the market. So making sure that both sides of that coin, making sure that their voices are heard. Um, there's it's a lot of back and forth with communication.
It's a lot
I
of
don't
soft.
even know what I do.
Well, just communication changes, right? So someone says, I need this person, and then 5 minutes later, it's like, well, not technically that person, but a person like this in certain ways. And then the next day, they're like, well, no, I need five of those, but no, two, maybe. And it's just, the communication is where it just keeps looping and everything changes and starts again.
Yeah. And I think with time as well, you sort of learn what different people need you to be. So, I would say with hiring managers that do often change their mind on what they want, they often just want someone to hear them out and then go back to their original plan the next day anyway.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas on the other side of that conversation, you've got a candidate that's doing the same thing that's, you know, yes, I want the job. No, I don't want the job. And again, it's often learning
Mm.
or uncovering what it is that that person is hesitating on and playing into it a little bit and going, okay, well, let's unpack that. Um, you know, Telling any of your personal experience, whether you've encountered that yourself while you're looking for roles, or if you've had other candidates um, that have been in a similar situation, and explaining how that panned out for them. Um, it really is just listening.
It's amazing that how a lot of people don't understand um, the negotiation with managers and recruiters and advisors and then the candidates themselves. I've been working with a few people that have been made redundant recently, and they're going through the job hunt process, and they're getting frustrated, going, they don't sound like the company doesn't sound like they know what they want, or they've changed their mind and the job is now this. And like, it's quite a normal part of the process. They just, as a candidate, you don't see it that often, but as a manager, when you start meeting people and you're getting a sense for what skill sets are still available in the market, and you're getting a sense of what actually needs to be done in the role, it's very normal for these things to change quite often.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge issue in the industry at the moment. We don't have the upper hand anymore. The candidates very much have all the power at the moment, and we're often dictated by what they want and what our businesses can even afford. Salary is a huge issue here in Australia at the moment, and I know that's felt widely across the world. It is often a bit of a power struggle between the companies and the candidates, and the companies don't want to relinquish that power, but the candidates know that they've got it. So it's a really fine line to walk. Um, and I think traditionally as well, recruitment have often, someone leaves a role, recruitment are brought in to find someone with almost a cookie cutter skill set, and we can't go to market like that anymore. And we're still very much in a bit of a learning cycle of, well, how do we assess what skills we actually need moving forward, as opposed to just replacing like for like, because it doesn't move the business forward anymore. And quite frankly, those people just don't exist. The candidates also want to keep moving and developing. And so everyone's so unique in what they've done before and what they want to do moving forward, that it's not realistic to look at that like for like candidate anymore. Which, yeah, so it's definitely not surprising when you do hear those candidate feedbacks saying that it seems like the company's a little bit wishy-washy, and that probably is, the recruitment team maybe not communicating properly as well, because they're also trying to work out what best practice is in those situations. But yeah, those people, you're not alone.
No.
With your job then, so you talk about recruitment, but you're not a recruiter. So recruitment is like a part of your sort of the scope of work that you do.
uh, I would say my title is kind of just a fancy way of saying recruiter, really. Um, but um, it is definitely, no matter what your title is in the field, the actual recruitment function ultimately is a pretty small portion of what we do. Going out, finding CVs and talking to people and prospective candidates, it is very time consuming. Um, but it's all the things in the background that we do that no one sees. So that's often educating our hiring managers on what the market trends are at the moment. Doing a lot of salary research at the moment. Again, it's something, you know, recruitment agencies publish their annual salary surveys, and we used to be able to rely on that pretty well. But again, with how the market's moving at the moment, those surveys become redundant within weeks of them being published. It's insane. So it's a lot of educating ourselves on what's actually happening out there, but then trying to again relay that back to the business and make sure that the business has an understanding, and trying to align both of those sides.
Yeah, like you said, it's a lot of communication because you're going back to the
Yes.
hiring managers, but you're also triple checking that you do need that like for like person, or if they need to branch off to create a new role entirely, and that whole process of how you would do that and where you would look for
Yeah.
that and the salaries and it's
Yeah. And
incredible.
absolutely. And, at the moment we're often telling people news that they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
It is there are a lot of very tough conversations that have to be had. And there's a lot of prep work and a lot of strategy around how we actually deliver that message that, again, no one often sees because it's not the sexy part of the work.
And it's the part that, it's your everyday. So you get a little bit used to it. And then when you actually make that higher, it's that really nice endorphin for you. But you get stuck into having those hard conversations constantly and pushing it for, the future of the company, not necessarily, that department as well. You're thinking of everything as a whole as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're working mostly with like local market candidates, or are you trying to source candidates from overseas and bring them across to do work? Or
A little bit of both. It is mostly local candidates in this role, but there are certain roles that we do have to go international for, often for more tech focused roles. The business, like being global as well, although we do have a global recruitment team. Um, we do often share the workload as well. So if our colleagues in the US are struggling and we're we have a pretty light capacity, we'll often help with some of their open roles as well.
It's great when you got multinational companies, and you can almost learn from each other. And I feel like in some cases things happen to the US before they happen to Australia, so you can kind
Yes.
of prep for it in some ways.
Yes, definitely. And just such different approaches to recruitment as well.
Yeah,
They're often a bit more, well, they're often a lot more professional over there throughout the process, and the candidates very much want to be wined and dined, so to speak.
yeah.
Whereas I find in Australia it's very much, it's a much more casual approach. They more so want to have a conversation with you and get to know you a bit more personally, as
Yeah.
opposed to just going straight to business and saying, all right, well, what have you got to give me?
What are my bonuses and packages
Yeah.
and relocation?
Yep.
Whereas at the beginning, it's like, oh, how's your mum? So, how did you get started in all of this?
Just by chance, actually. Uh, some might say it was divine intervention. I I moved to Sydney with a job that I absolutely hated, and I told myself I would do anything to get out of it. Um, and yeah, landed an admin position at a recruitment agency. I don't remember applying for the job, but it was it was by far one of the best jobs I've ever had. So yeah, just starting as as an office coordinator, and I was very fortunate that the director and my boss at the time saw something in me, and I had the hunger and interest to just keep learning, and she was more than happy to give me that opportunity. So
That's
yeah, it's very
amazing.
fortunate.
Yeah.
did you put your hand up for that, or you were approached? They said, "Hey, what about this over here?" Or how did it?
I was pushy.
Good.
I was a very pushy young lady. I knew, I knew I wanted to throw my hat in the ring, and I wasn't afraid to ask for it at the time, which I think actually went a long way with that particular boss. I think she respected that approach. She was very no nonsense. So yeah, it was great.
That's good. When you get someone who reacts to that really well, and then really respects it and sees that fire in you and wants to push you far, it's an unbelievable feeling.
Yes, it is. Although she has set a very high bar for me moving forward, so it can work both ways.
Was the admin role your first sort of? That's how you started your career, or what? Tell us more about your journey. Was there other roles you were doing before that?
No, I was just working a casual retail role before that. Um, so I guess for quite a long time, since I was able to work, I was always in that kind of customer service industry. So that's really bread and butter of what recruitment do. So I guess you could say that from an early age, maybe I was destined to be where I am. But I really did just fall into it. I never even knew it was an avenue I could take. It's not really a big thing here. I think a lot of people I talk to are in the same boat as me. They just fall into it. Um, yeah, so not yeah, so not really much of a journey. It just happened one night, and I rolled with it.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever met a recruiter who set out to be a recruiter. Like it's sort of like they fell into it with those core skills, the communication skills, the customer skills, or they were just in a spot at the right place. Like,
Yes.
know.
Yep. 100%.
But
Yeah.
if you were somebody a bit younger at the moment and decided actually I do want to be a recruiter, that is my dream. Is there a quicker way to do it? Is there a way? I don't know. Is there courses in recruiting, or is it really just on the job training?
Uh, it really is just
Okay,
on the
I
job
found this on the
training.
web for is there.
Sorry, my Siri decided to answer the question for you.
No need to apologise. Sorry, I'm not sure what you want me to change.
Thanks, Siri.
He's
Oh my
never
god!
learned.
No way.
You should keep that in. That was hilarious.
Just special guest.
So if you were at the start of your career and you decided that being a recruiter was actually your goal, is there a way to get into recruitment that is a bit more direct? Like, is there a course, or is it really just on the job training?
I would say my path was the most direct. um, I wasn't in that admin role for very long. I think it was maybe 3 months until I started taking on some more consultant duties. Again, very fortunate. It doesn't happen to everyone. Um, there's not necessarily recruitment specific courses you can take. Um, there might be some short courses. There's a lot of stuff on LinkedIn Learning, which are often quite helpful. Um, but I know, anyone that has studied and fallen into recruitment, they tend to have done like business admin or HR specific courses, and then found that they enjoy the recruitment side of things. I wouldn't really say it's necessary though. Um, on the job training is really everything that you need. I would say in terms of like career progression or career development, you can definitely have a very long and fulfilling career in recruitment, and you can go very far without any tertiary qualifications. But I think what will probably, or what I at least hope we'll start to see, is that some more specializations might come out of the industry. So at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of recruitment marketing specialists over in the UK at the moment. So obviously, if that does become a trend here, which I'm praying it is because that's what I'm studying, I think in those cases we might see some more, tertiary courses pop up for recruitment. And if you do want to start specializing in some more business focused areas, then some sort of business qualification might be helpful, but it's definitely not necessary at all, in my opinion.
I think that's the great thing about it, though, with recruitment. And I don't think many people realize you can fall into it and you can get stuck into it and you get to meet all of these wonderful people in interviews. You learn how the entire company works from A to B, and A to Z. And, it's that whole wonderful
It's a very
cycle.
small company.
A to B, only B. But, I think it's not taught enough. It's not, you don't get taught it in high school. It's not an option in high school. And speaking to some friends and stuff, they're like, oh, you're just a recruiter. It's like, no, I'm not actually. There's the stories at the side of it. There's so much going on, and it's incredibly interesting. No day is the same, and it actually earns a decent income in comparison to
Absolutely.
other business admin roles.
Yeah, definitely. And we need to know everything about the business, really. We need to know what finance are doing and how finance impacts job specs, and we need to know every little nuance about all the different roles that we might recruit for in the company, so we can actually have an intelligent conversation with candidates. There's a lot of legalities that go into what we do, particularly when you're starting to look at DE and I type focuses. You've got to be very sensitive with how you approach those activities. And you can't just go out and say what you want to people. You've got to be very specific with your wording and what you're trying to get across to them, whether it's a positive or a negative message. So yeah, I hate when people say, oh, you're just doing recruitment. It's like, boy, you've got no idea all of the knowledge that we have to know to do our job mediocre, let alone doing it well.
You're up managing, you're down managing, you're side managing, you're knowing what your market's doing, your social media, your everything.
Yes. And, for literally everyone that starts at the company, we are their first interaction with the business. Like, we are the face of the brand, essentially. So how we show up to those meetings with candidates can really make or break their experience.
Yeah.
And that's a huge weight to bear. We're people. We have really bad days and we have really good days, and it's such an amazing job to do on the days that you're feeling really positive, but on the days that you've got too much going on, it's the hardest job in the world. But yet there's no grace. No allowance for us to have those bad days. So you've got to get creative with how you show up to work in those situations, and it's hard.
Yeah, it's my shiny pineapple t-shirt. She's just gonna wear it. It's gonna be the day. It's gonna suck today, but we're gonna wear the shiny pineapple t-shirt. But segmenting onto a silly Roxy story, I interviewed a guy once that had done an entire concept artist portfolio on bombs. And you're sitting in this room with this guy and you're thinking, oh my God, one, this is really good work, but I don't think the art director's going for you, mate. So how am I going to turn you down? Because I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. You know a lot about bombs. He took it pretty well in the end, but it was really...
Did you give some advice on maybe having some diversity in his reel?
Yes.
But again, I think in those situations, it comes back to trying to work out what that person needs you to be to them. You know, some people don't want the feedback. You know, some people just really don't want to hear any criticism, and you can definitely pick that vibe up when you're, when you're talking to them, and so you'll know not to delve too deeply into the actual feedback that's been given to you by your hiring manager. But then some people do actively ask you for it, and in those situations it can be just as hard because maybe the hiring managers given their feedback in ways that aren't maybe politically correct to just outright say someone. So again, it's getting creative with how you deliver that message, and actually getting to the core of what that person was trying to say about the candidate.
With recruitment, then there's sort of two distinct types of recruiter. You've got sort of that agency type recruiting, and then you've got more internal company talent acquisition type recruiting. Have you worked in both spaces or one space? Can you sort of give us a bit of an example around what the difference is with those two?
Yes. At this point, I've kind of split my career down the middle of both sides. So I've done 3 years agency, 3 years client side. Super different approaches. I guess the obvious one for agency is it is a bit more of a salesy type role. You are going out, you're finding your new business, you know, and you are a lot more distanced from the company because you're not sitting in it every day. So that presents some unique challenges with trying to understand the unique business challenges and needs. You can sometimes only do that to a certain extent, and I think how deep you go is quite telling of how good of a recruiter you are and whether agency is for you or not. Whereas internal, I actually struggle with quite a lot. I get too involved in the process sometimes because I can see the impact that it's actually having on the team being a man down. I think I get too emotional, and I'm just as upset that Joe's team is super stressed not having this hire. So you sometimes need to switch on that agency brain and go, no, it's fine, it's not, you're doing what you can. But I think that would be the biggest difference, is that you can, agency, you're a little removed from from the day-to-day impact of having a gap in the team, whereas internally you see it, you walk past that team every day, you have Friday drinks with them, and you can hear their stresses, and it can be quite challenging to separate the two and go, okay, that's part of their job, this is part of my job. It's different.
Well, I was about to ask you what's your favorite part of your job, but I feel like that actually segments into Nathan's question, so I'm going to do this backwards. What's the worst part of your job?
How long have you got? Well, I think again, it's being internal. It's seeing the stress that that the team are often under. Since COVID, the time to hire metrics have increased, just because there's such low unemployment rates, and again, we're kind of battling business needs and candidate wants. So that has been quite interesting to battle. But I also think it's really hard to sit there and watch a hiring manager turn down a really, really good candidate because they don't have 110% of the skills. Most of what I do on a daily basis is trying to get my hiring managers to see the potential in people as opposed to what they're lacking. And there's always going to be some people that that, you know, that can't see past, you know, the skills deficits. And it's so heart-wrenching when you have to give that candidate that you formed quite a unique relationship with, when you have to let them go. I think that's the worst, by far the worst part of the role.
Definitely. You're trying to show them that they are the shiny unicorn they're looking for. You just got to give them a couple more steps.
Yes, exactly.
So, flipping that around again. So, what's the best part? Talk us about everything that's lovely in the job.
Oh, when they do say yes to the candidate that you absolutely love, and the candidate signs within seconds of getting their contract.
It is like finding a unicorn.
It is. You know, even if you're filling a role that, you know, like if it's a graduate role and there's so many of them, you know, it's, you know, it's the same whether it's a hard role or an easy role. Like that adrenaline rush you get when you get that signed contract back from someone that you genuinely love
Yeah.
is such a great feeling. And I think the day that feeling goes away, I'll quit. I don't think any recruiter should have that, you know, have that giddiness die inside them.
No.
But, you know, again, I also think it's just the people you meet. You know, yes, there are some interesting people that you'd maybe rather not meet that you do unfortunately uncover, but 99% of the time you meet some really, like, yeah, some really fantastic people that just have the wildest life stories that you can learn from.
Yeah.
You know, particularly with the way I like to structure my interviews, I do speak a lot more informally, and, you know, I would rather get to know them personally first and then delve into their professional skills. And I like doing it that way because it breaks the ice, but it also helps me form that relationship with that person, and that relationship's a lot stronger than if I was just interested in them from a professional perspective.
It also sort of outlines those soft skills, the communication skills, and sometimes the hiring manager doesn't pick up on why they don't like someone. And so if you're able to create that sort of personal connection at the beginning and you can tailor it for that, you're more likely to be able to sell it to your hiring manager because you've also created that connection, right? So you're bringing those wonderful core values and soft skills that we're always talking about and bringing them into the interview by asking more personal questions and not just the set, do you know this software, how does the software work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest thing to find is that cultural fit.
Yeah.
You know, you can find anyone with the right tech stack, but you can't find anyone that will fit that specific team and their challenges and quirks.
Yeah.
So, you know, and you don't uncover them unless you know that person, you know, to some sort of personal extent.
Yeah.
Do you have like a go-to question? Do you have like a, this is the question that I get the best read on someone?
The very first question I ask anyone, and it's basic as, but I've asked it with every single candidate I've had for the last 6 years. It's just, so tell me about yourself. And it's always interesting to see how that person interprets it. I don't care if they tell me about their personal life. I don't care if they jump straight into their professional spiel. But I find that keeping it so open and broad, they give me so much information, and they quite often answer half of the questions I wanted to ask of them anyway.
Love it. So it's sort of, it gives them the opportunity to express themselves clearly and how they communicate. It's that power of silence. You just sit there, just let them.
Yes.
I went to a networking event last night with a bunch of people, and they're all getting really nervous because it was speed dating. Networking is kind of like interviewing, right? And they're saying, well, what do I say? What do I say? How do I pitch myself? I said, well, ask them first. Who are they? And then bounce off them. And they all came out after that going, wow, I met this. And I actually found out this. Rather than, yeah, and I said the silence helps a bit, and then you listen, and you've got your 2 minutes to chat. Then, so if you just throw it at them to get them to talk a bit, then you'll start.
Yes.
But it's a wonderful experience, then. But it also gives you really good experience on actually pitching yourself for that question in an interview, because I sat there when someone asked me, well, tell me about yourself. It's like, well, what do I start with? Like, which project or which idea for
Which
that
part am I learning?
room? Yeah.
And it does throw some people off, and that's absolutely fine. It's not designed to make anyone scared or nervous. I quite like when people say, "Oh gosh, what would you like to know? Where do you want me to begin?" And in that situation, I do often say, "Okay, well, tell me about your most recent role." Um, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually kind of like it a little bit more when people do show that they're flustered and acknowledge that and ask for assistance. I think that shows a lot of courage for them to do in an interview as well, which I think is quite telling.
Yeah.
Um, it's all a psychological game. It's how do I actually understand you in the teeny tiny amount of time that we have together. That probably makes it sound a little bit sinister, but it really is about, well, how do I get some snippet of your real personality and not just the professional front that you want to show in that interview.
It's such a small amount of time to hire somebody in such a big leap in their lives, and it's always so daunting. You're going back and forth with your hiring manager about whether or not you're making the right decision. You're picking through people, and then also the interview as the interviewee. And if it's the first couple of interviews you've done in a while, you sit and you pick at every word you say, everything you've said. You sit there, why did I mention that? And um and in some cases you don't get the feedback for it, like in some industries there's a lot of applicants, or in the visual effects industry in particular, there's no answers sometimes. Like, there are roles that are running but they haven't hit the ground yet, so there's people sitting there but you can't say go on them yet because we don't know if that production's approved, or so there's that whole domino effect of communication like you were talking about, and trying to be open with the candidate about that is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so time consuming, but I think just like in those situations, just telling them how it is all it takes, because
Yeah.
most recruiters don't want to, or
No.
think they don't have the time to do that. And it's I can't count the amount of times that people have got to the end of the recruitment process and we have either hired them or let them go, and they've gone, you know what, Steph, I'm not mad either
Yeah.
way what the decision was, because you've kept me updated and it was an easy process. For me, that's the biggest compliment, is when someone turns around and says, you made this easy.
Yeah.
Because it's not a rap that recruiters have. We're notorious for overcomplicating things sometimes, and unfortunately the candidates are often they often cop the brunt of that, and we rightfully so have a bad reputation when we do those things. And I kind of build my career on trying to break that stereotype and going, no, we're not all bad. Some of us do genuinely care, and yes, it's tedious answering your call for the fifth time today, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna make you feel that way, because I know you're stressed, and I've
Yeah.
been there too. It sucks.
Yeah, definitely. And that takes me into my next question really well, is do you have any advice for anyone starting out as a recruiter?
Don't be afraid to pick up the call. Don't be afraid to answer the phone. Um, Whatever you've got to do to just get the answers you need for the people that are asking you those questions. Um, Again, like, we have a lot of tough conversations. You will never be able to avoid that, so don't try. Lean into them. Like Nathan said before, silence is often all that's needed. Silence can speak 1,000 words. So if if you are having a tough conversation and you don't know how to approach your answer, take a beat and say, you know what, I don't actually know. um
That works for everything. Salary negotiations, reviews, tough conversations with your bosses or your co-workers. If you can actually just step back in any way, shape, or form and say, you know what, I'm going to get back to you right
yeah.
now. Actually, let's have an email chat, or hey, can we actually catch up about this tomorrow? Or with an interviewee, I may be waiting on one or two more pieces of information, but I'll give you a call tomorrow if it's getting tougher and tougher. It's a little
Yes.
white lie in some cases, but it's something that makes someone feel more comfortable, and then you can step back and think about that conversation and come back
Yes.
to it with much better light, and so does the other person that you're talking to in any of those situations that I mentioned.
Yeah. Definitely, but make sure you follow through on whatever it is that you've promised them.
Yes. Yeah.
It's nothing worse than having a recruiter say, "Oh yeah, I'll do that for you," and then never hearing from them again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so just make a lot of notes, lean into the hard conversations, and do everything that you promise. And if you can't do that, then go back to communicating. You know, go back to just being upfront with that and saying, look, something's come up. I can't do this for you anymore. But here's what I can do instead.
With another twist on that question, do you have one piece of advice that you wish every candidate would know and understand?
I care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your recruiters care. Be kind. Be
Yeah.
kind to them. They care.
Yes. And if you feel your recruiter doesn't, then they're not doing their job, and that's not a reflection of you at all. In every profession, there's people that don't love their job, and it shows, but that's not all of us. And again, I will be as honest with you as you are with me as well. So just tell me where you're at in your recruitment journey. Tell me if you've had bad experiences. Tell me if there's another offer on the table. I can't help you if I don't know the full story.
That is awesome advice. And we had a podcast just the other day where they were talking about um, somebody had a really good experience with a recruiter, and it was just that she listened to what he wanted, and when things went pear shaped, he didn't get angry. He just went back to her and said, "Look, you sold me a dud. It didn't work." But he wasn't angry. They had a chat. She got to know him better, and then actually gave him an alternative role that he hadn't even considered, but based on what she saw in his skill set, said, actually, you need to go talk to these people. And now he's thriving in a career that he absolutely loves. So you meet the good ones, and they're going to take care of you. It's not all about a quick commission. A lot of recruiters are here to actually they get the feels too. They want to help.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I had that feeling when I was agency side as well. The commission is nice. Let's be real, but you know, it's not worth anything if that candidate's not happy.
It's such a small world now, right? So you want to make sure you're developing those connections and you're keeping them. It's almost like when you leave a bad job, you never set it on fire when you leave, right? So
Yes.
you don't want to ruin any of those connections, because it could always come back around. And I know some recruiters are not great, yes, but a lot of them really try their hardest at the communication and the candidate life cycle of it all. And I've never come across a recruiter that hasn't tried as hard as possible. But for our previous guest to turn around and say, well, this wasn't for me, actually means that there was more communication, as you mentioned, and therefore
Yes.
the recruiter understands it better. So it wasn't all, the recruiter was able to get all of that from another instance of getting to know someone, and every time you get to know that candidate, the better you can apply a job for them, or even understand that they can pivot in careers or have different career skills or transferable skills. So
Yeah.
it's like I met a compositor the other day that can do landscape gardening. You never know, but it might be something one day.
So you mentioned on the job training, that's sort of the key to recruiting. So you're going to sort of get your teeth into it all. But in terms of your education, then, is there anything that you've done or that you're doing, or that any resources that stand out that's been key to your success?
So not necessarily. For my own curiosity, I have done a like a business psychology, short course certificate. I do think that's quite helpful. Again, a lot of what we do is mental games and trying to uncover how we can get people to open up to us. So I do think that was quite beneficial. But again, not necessary. I didn't go to university out of high school. I did one semester and dropped out. So, I wouldn't say that going and doing a bachelor's degree is completely necessary either. But for me personally, I have reached a point in my career where I've developed some new skill sets and new curiosities, particularly in recruitment marketing. So it is a shame it's not a bigger industry in Australia yet, but I'm hoping to be ahead of that curve. Um, I think my previous job really taught me to kind of question everything and go, okay, well, why is this job not performing? Why is this one so hard? Why is this particular profile the one that we can never find? It's easy to roll over and say, oh, it's always been that way. It is what it is. Um, but yeah, over 6 years, I think I've realized that I can't accept it is what it is as an answer. So I have actually gone back to uni, and I'm midway through my MBA with a specialization in digital marketing to try and marry the business side and the marketing to help answer some of those questions. It's a little tricky trying to adapt the marketing courses to a recruitment lens, because it's not a thing here. No one thinks about it. I'm quite literally the only one in the company asking some of these questions. But I think longer term, it's going to be so crucial for recruiters to have a bit more of a technical mindset around, around data, around brand management, and finding ways to get creative and use those things to attract the top talent, because what we're doing right now isn't working. And when it is, it's kind of pure luck.
You're so right. And you talked to me about this a couple of months ago, and it didn't hit me until I started my new job. And it is just such a big thing about how companies put themselves out there, how they communicate, and the different ways they need to communicate to the different markets, the different people. um, and it's incredible if you can actually tailor something towards a certain audience. The applicants that you get that are so much better. And if you look at Canva as a really good example of that, they're great with their advertising their culture. And then with certain roles, they've got a whole bunch of new roles, which I think they're still working out. But then, like the set roles they've got, you can see it everywhere, and you can kind of see where certain people would fit in it. And I think I've been fascinated in following them. But they've got a brand, because they are a branding company, but they've got this whole branding around them, which is incredible. um so yeah, it's very exciting.
Absolutely.
I'm so
Yeah,
excited to see where you
definitely.
end up.
Yeah, and every company's got the facilities internally to answer those questions. Um, you can't have a business without some form of a marketing strategy. Otherwise, no one would know about you. So I think long term, it's about finding ways to tap into that knowledge in the business and find a way to create some sort of path between recruitment and the marketing department,
Yeah.
in realizing that it is a big holistic picture, and not just a separate business function that everyone's scared of and no one wants to talk to.
But it's even the small stuff as a recruiter. You almost need to put the Instagram posts out there as your recruiter to show the culture of your company, and the wording around that is so particular. And the steps that you need to take to open those doors for people to talk to you. You almost need to be so connected to that marketing department as if it's another arm.
It's interesting with, and then we talk about AI taking our jobs and whatnot. Like, it's going to be a little bit of a thing, particularly for the low level activities required in talent acquisition and recruitment. Like, a lot of that screening stuff is going to become so automated. I think it's really interesting the direction you're going, because you're going to start thinking far more strategically around, a company needs talent acquisition, but they're going to be using these people in such a different way to what they've been using them up until now. It won't be screening so much. It's going to be more strategy and branding and that aspect, and that's going to be a challenge, because a lot of the roles are just so focused on processing and doing rather than strategy and thinking. So it's a fascinating space to be going into. I'm excited for you.
Definitely. And you know what? Recruitment's not changed since it became a thing, right? We've all been doing the same strategy, the same techniques, the same step-by-step guide that someone way back when decided was the way to do it. The only thing that's really changed is that we're not putting ads in newspapers anymore. We're putting ads on LinkedIn and and messaging people about roles that we have open. So I think it's well overdue that the industry does have that kind of shake up. I do think AI has a long way to go. I think classic case that we've recently learned about, and it's definitely not a new case by any means, but there's a big I won't name them, but US tech giant who tested it out. They had an AI review and pick review their applicants and pick who they were going to interview, and the bias of the developers who created that platform heavily influenced the recruitment process, and they only ended up interviewing, I think it was white males for this particular role, and it was a bunch of white males that created the program, I think. So there's a long way to go. You obviously have bias in people, but I think when people are involved and different people from different backgrounds are involved, we can at least challenge each other. Whereas AI, it's kind of set and forget, which is a little bit frightening. But for a lot of the lower level roles, I'm absolutely using it. Like doing my job ads, I've always hated that part of my job. And to put in a technical job description into an AI and have it spit back a very flamboyant job ad is amazing.
It's brilliant. Just, can I have 30 words above this job description, then just redo it, rejig it, and go, yeah, that sounds a bit more like me. That's great. Let's go. Rather than sitting there for 2 hours going, I can't say words.
Yes. Yes. I'm not a copywriter by any means.
No. So this takes us into our last question, which is, what quote do you go by that inspires you on a daily basis?
Oh, not a big quotes gal.
It's okay.
I'd rather forge my own path. But the one thing that has always stuck with me is, I think it's a Bill Gates quote actually, and it's to find the laziest person to do the hardest task, because they'll find the easiest way to do it. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's the way I like to try and structure my life as someone who naturally overcomplicates a lot of things. We're not rocket scientists and we're not doing brain surgery, so why make it complicated? So yeah, that's sort of the one quote that's always stuck in my mind, and it's something I think is very true.
It's brilliant. It's just, where do you find that lazy person?
I think I'm that lazy person, actually.
Okay.
I'm all about continuous improvement and looking for quicker ways.
Yes.
Is that what all the YouTube videos are about?
Like you look at something, it must be an easier way. YouTube will tell you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's lazy at all. I think that's poor wording on his part. I think it's efficient and very intelligent.
I go the long way around everything accidentally all the time, so I can tell you the A to B, A to B, no Z's, because I've done the Z's.
Listen, you
I
learn a lot
try
on
to
those.
cheat, and it doesn't work. Hey?
You learn a lot on those journeys, though.
Yes, yeah, I do.
All right, that's wrapping up. It's been fantastic having you, Steph. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the insights. It's been great fun.
Yes, thank you so much. And I hope to see a lot more recruiters on the market out there now.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for all of your insight and all of your time today.
My pleasure, Roxy. Thank you.
You've been listening to Roxy and Nate. Thanks for tuning in to A to Z Jobs. And always remember, it's your career and it's up to you to shape it. So dream big, make bold moves, stay curious, and keep exploring. Check out our website at thecareerchangecoaches.com for more resources, tools, and upcoming training.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of A to Z Jobs. Remember, your dream career could be just one episode away.